Good morning. Right, one more time. Good morning. Good morning. Glad to see everybody here. Welcome. I know we have some new people here as well as our more, I hate to say old people, I'm going to say experienced members. And I'm glad you're here, particularly coming out in the weather we had last night. I thought we were going to have to come down here in boats. I'm Bill Vick, and I'm standing in for Shelley Mathis, and Shelley really is the one that does all this magic that you see around here right now. She's had a little hiccup with her knee, so she's sitting here critiquing whatever I say, so I have to be careful. But I love it. Shelley gave me an agenda, which I have to follow, so I follow my agenda, and she'll probably give me marks and notes afterwards. But this is, I'm not sure what meeting this is for. We've been doing this now for going on 4 years. So probably this is 45th, whatever it is. And every meeting, it's always exciting to me personally. Just seeing the people that come here and the friendships that have been spawned and the fellowship that's supported, and the questions that have been answered, and the ideas that are generated. And for me personally, it's just been an incredible experience. And I think that's true of most of us here. This morning we have a kind of a retreat in our speaker. I'll introduce it in a second, but I have a question because I know there's a few new members here. Can I see who's a new member? Okay, Judith, I know you are. Okay, we got two. Okay, we got three. I wonder if you'd mind just taking a second and just, if you're comfortable, stand up and just tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself so we kind of know who you are. Why don't we start with you, Judith?
Well, thank you. I'm Judith Thornton, and I retired about a year and a half ago, and was diagnosed with ILD in August, and have been on continuous oxygen since that day. And I'm just trying to learn how to live with it and deal with my little tail that follows me around the house.
Thank you, Judith.
Welcome to you.
Sure, my name is Scott Hyde. I was diagnosed about 7 years ago with ILD. It's gotten much worse in the last 6 months. And I'm in the study it's a double-blind study for the internet, PFWarrior drug. And this is my wife. We're just here trying to meet other people going through the same thing.
Where are you going into the study at?
Baylor.
Okay, it's got away.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, the studies are interesting. I saw when I was first diagnosed, actually about 3 years into diagnosis, when the study I was in is Zesprit, which is the Genentech pirfenidone product. So they're very worthy to do. Plus you get free drugs.
I think I'm on a placebo.
No, you never know. All right. Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm Junior. Came here with her so I could learn more what she's going through and how she is pick up on.
Also, just Junior, for your mom and your family, who's not here today, is Nancy Lee, is actually working with us in translating everything we do. Our literature will be translated so we can speak Spanish literature, here for support languages, because it's really important, because there's an interesting anomaly. When you look at the spread of ILD patients, and you look at the distribution of patients, there's this little bump in a bubble in the Hispanic community. Nobody knows why.
Yeah.
But I think there's a huge number of people in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex that we're not reaching. We want to.
Yeah. It's just good to know that we need help on it, you know.
Sure, absolutely.
That's even better.
Your mother, I've seen her here before, and you tell her from me, I'm glad she's here. And we miss anybody that's new?
My name's Ed Walski. I'm a physician. I've had IPF since 2011, and I've got very short fingers, so I think that's what's causing the problem.
Ed, I have to comment too, because I know Ed well, and Ed is, he's kind of leading the charge in this the leading edge of technologies, tools, and techniques. And he's in a position where he can try things that we, citizens, if you will, just may not have access to. So I love talking to him, and we communicate back and forth. He's doing a lot of really innovative, smart things. And he's attacking this from a lot of different perspectives. And so I'm really glad you're here. Thank you. Rhoda's not here, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the trials that are going on. But Roseanne is. And Roseanne, are you out? You're still outside. Roseanne, could you come in a second? Thank you. We're, as an organization, we'll be exhibiting at the American Thoracic Society meeting in May. And it's going to have, I just sat down with some of their board this last week here in Dallas. And they're expecting 16,000 attendees. And of that 16, the primary number of attendees will be either pulmonologists or researchers. So it's an important event for the pulmonary community, but in particular for us as an organization. So we're going to have a booth. And Roseanne and her team is running the booth, and you want to talk about a little recruitment pitch?
Yeah, if you're interested in helping us out, just come see me after the meeting, and because we'll need as many volunteers as we can, so we can make sure out of that 5 day span, we get it all covered, and nobody's there too long, especially patients. I don't want them standing on the feet or having to wait too long. So anybody who's interested in helping out, just let me know afterwards. I just need your information, and then I'll give you details later. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have 12 people staffing the booth because we don't want any patient to spend more than about 2 hours. And we will have oxygen. We're going to have oxygen delivered or a concentrator. So if you're there and you are on oxygen, we'll have it covered. And basically the role and job is going to be to help engage doctors and researchers that come by our booth. And I've already got appointments scheduled with about a dozen of some of the leading doctors out there, including some of those from here in Dallas as well. And it should be a great event. You'll have an opportunity to go on a Saturday at no charge as a patient attendee, and it'll be most rewarding. But we do need help, really need help. And so we're setting a goal of about 12 people. If we get more, that's fine, but we can't do it with less.
Excuse me, what was the date on that again?
It's May the 17th through May the 23rd. And the big days are, for us, are going to be Saturday the 18th, and then the actual exhibit, the conference itself. And there'll be, I'm sure not sure about the actual number, there's probably, you've been here before, we had about 100 plus.
100,000,
Yeah, there's just tons of things you can attend and listen. But leading doctors, leading researchers, you name it, it'll be covered about this and other lung diseases. So we're kind of a subset of that. We're not the whole purpose. But we're going to be loud enough and obnoxious enough so we're the whole purpose. Let me introduce our guest speaker, and I'm really thrilled to do this because Dr. Leanne Silhan is an assistant professor of internal medicine at UT Southwestern. And I know some of the people in this room attend Dr. Silhan's, their doctor. And she specializes in interstitial lung diseases, including idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and lung diseases associated with connective tissue diseases. So those comorbidities of RA and others, she's the right person to talk to. Before UT Southwestern, she was on the faculty at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, where she was a specialist in both ILD and lung transplantation. In my personal opinion, she's also one of the most supportive doctors in the Metroplex for this group. And her presentations have just received great reviews, and particularly some of her comments on oxygen. So this morning is going to be her discussing with us and talking about acute infections and prevention of infections. But it'll be open forum afterwards for you to ask questions and get some good answers. And it's kind of a fair game. So if you have an oxygen question, I will take advantage of Dr. Silhan being here. And with that, Dr. Silhan. just going to read it.
Before we get started, Rhoda sincerely apologizes that she didn't make it. She got today's date confused with a date in April, and we're also speaking to a group of physicians here, so she apologized for not making it, but she was just going to talk briefly about some of the clinical trials that we are enrolling for at this point in time. We've had several registry trials that are still enrolling for both idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and other interstitial lung diseases. Those are both still open, and they basically are just we're looking at the disease, and we're looking at kind of natural course of history and what medications people are on, whether they may be helping or not helping. So those are available at all times. The clinical trials for medication therapies, there's a trial by Neto, which is currently enrolling. It's an infusion drug given every 4 weeks. And it allows for background therapy with either Esbriet or OFA. The second clinical trial is actually by Fibrogen, which many of you may have heard about because they've been around quite a while, and their drug has shown promise in liver cirrhosis or fibrosis of the liver. That trial, it has not, we were expecting it to start enrolling soon, but there's been some delay with the sponsors. So they're expecting it in the next 2 to 4 months. That drug, unfortunately, does not allow for background therapy with either OFEV or Esbriet, for reasons not completely clear to me, but that's the decision that they've made. So if there's people that you know, or if you're one of those patients that are not on OFEV or Esbriet for one reason or another, they would be eligible for that trial. That also is an infusion every 4 weeks, so patients who are enrolled in that would come to the medical center for those treatments. And then lastly, one that I'm really excited about, but it's probably 6 to 8 months away, is looking at personalized genetic medicine for an old drug called NAC, which many of you may have heard about, and I'll be talking a little bit about its role in infection. But NAC was something we used to give almost everyone with IPF until the Panther IPF trial was published and showed that overall it didn't benefit the larger population of patients with IPF. After that trial came out, a discovery was made by some great researchers in IPF that it actually significantly benefits a subset of people with IPF that have a certain TALF mutation. And so this trial will be open to people that have a genetic TALF specific mutation, and it will be patients who are on OFEV plus either NAC or placebo. So that'll be available sometime in the fall or winter. So I think those were mostly the trials that Rhoda was going to discuss. I apologize if I missed any. But she will be here on April 13th, which is when she thought she was supposed to come, to present to on the France Foundation conference that we're running at that time. So with that, I will get on to my presentation. Let's see. I think I'm going to ask your help how I turn this part on. I have everything else ready. Prevention and treatment of acute infection. Is it okay if I first two ones are necessarily important that I disclose. Okay. I have no relevant financial disclosures. However, I will be discussing non-FDA approved dietary supplements. And I'll be also discussing a couple of off-label uses of FDA-approved medications. What that means is that a medication has been approved for a certain condition, but we use it in other conditions because it's been shown effective, but the FDA has not approved it for that specific condition. I'm going to pause here because I think this is actually an important slide to show, and I have a quiz for you all. But I want to just give a cautionary. It's on now. A cautionary slide here about vitamins and herbs. So vitamins and herbs are potentially dangerous. Just because they're considered natural doesn't mean that they're safe. You can have, just like with any medication, you can have side effects from a vitamin or an herb. You can have drug interactions, which is a big deal for anyone who's on medications for their lung disease. And you can have impurities in these various things that you buy over the counter as a supplement. And I'll talk about some of the ways to protect yourself against some of these substances that may have impurities in them. And then the other point is to talk to your doctor about everything you're taking. So, when you first go to clinic and the nurse asks you to give her the med list, include your vitamins and supplements on that list. From my background in training is in conventional medicine, so a lot of us actually don't know a ton about some of the vitamins and supplements, especially herbal supplements. And so your doctor may have to spend some time on the computer looking these things up and looking up what some of the interactions. But that's a good thing. That's what you want your doctor doing. Viral infections affect adults on average 2 to 4 infections per year. Children, 6 to 12 infections per year. So if you have children or grandchildren, or you know this very well, that the kids always seem like they're sick and they get a ton of viral infections. This is mostly common colds, but again, adults 2 to 4 per year, and then children 6 to 12. Influenza infections, or the common flu, affect somewhere between 5% and 20% of the population every year. There's more than 200,000 people hospitalized a year with influenza because of the virus. And in the 2017 to 2018 year, 80,000 people died of the flu in the United States. And those were mostly children and people of older ages, and people with chronic diseases, particularly chronic lung diseases. So this is why this is a really important topic. So the yeah, round of applause for Steve. Thank you so much. Okay, so back to this slide. Vitamins and herbs are potentially dangerous. Does anyone know what plant this is? Looks like Swiss chard. Yeah, you might not want to eat this one. This is a tobacco plant. So just my point in that just because it's natural doesn't mean that it's safe. So tobacco plants are very natural, but we certainly shouldn't be using them. And then this is what we just discussed about the rates of common colds, influenza, and the number of deaths from the flu in the United States just this last flu season, which was a pretty bad flu season. So the annual incidence of pneumonia in the U.S. is about 24 cases per 10,000 adults, but that's almost triple in adults over the age of 65. The diagram here, down here is for outpatients that have community-acquired pneumonia, what the pneumonia is caused by. And in most of outpatients, we actually never get the bug. This actually looks like a big 15 major medical centers in the United States looking at pneumonia incidence as an outpatient. Most of the time, we don't colonize, or we don't culture something with bacteria or virus. bacteria known to cause pneumonia in both children and adults. Intracellular pathogens mean like mycoplasma, which has been given the lay name like walking pneumonia. Respiratory viruses is a small number, but I would argue that respiratory viruses is actually probably a large portion of that body. And then Haemophilus influenza, which is a common infection in children, is actually less common in adults. And then the important thing for this group is that these infections, viral, bacterial, are associated with idiopathic or with IPF acute exacerbations. This is sometimes abbreviated AV-IPF, acute exacerbation of IPF. So I'll spend a little bit of time just talking about this. So when I was in training, which was a while back, but when I was in training, we were taught that acute IPF exacerbations were, you could only call it that if they were idiopathic, meaning that you did a bronchoscopy and you couldn't find an infection, or you did a swab and someone wasn't infected. You did a CT scan with contrast to make sure they didn't have a blood clot in the lungs, because that can cause an acute worsening. And you had to make sure they were heart failure, and that's the only way you could call it an acute exacerbation of IPF. That definition has now been broadened to include triggered IPF exacerbations or idiopathic. And triggered, one of the most common triggered IPF exacerbation is infection. And that could be a viral infection from the common cold, like rhinovirus, or it could be a severe infection like influenza, or a bacterial infection like Streptococcus pneumonia. So we now include acute exacerbations of IPF under that umbrella. The other triggered exacerbations are blood clot in the lungs, the diastolic heart failure can trigger an exacerbation. So idiopathic, of course, is someone gets worse all of a sudden and you don't know why. You never figure out why they got worse. A subset of what we probably used to call idiopathic was probably triggered by a viral infection. We just didn't actually culture it when you do the swab, which is pretty common. By the way, y'all can stop me at any point in time if you have questions. So the objectives of my talk are to talk about prevention of infections. How can we prevent ourselves from getting sick? How do we treat ourselves if we get an infection, either viral, bacterial, less commonly or fungal infection? And then the last few slides I'll spend about just talking about symptomatic relief. If you get sick, how do you make yourself feel better while you wait for the infection to clear? So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of treatment. So we'll talk about vaccines, both the influenza vaccine and the pneumococcal vaccines, hand washing, whether or not masks, using masks are effective, and other measures, either dietary or there's some supplements out there that can maybe help prevent infection. So vaccines, we'll talk about again the influenza vaccine and the pneumococcal vaccine. This is an interesting article here that looked at the rate of severe reactions to the influenza vaccine. And a severe reaction to a vaccine, which means anaphylaxis, Guillain-Barré, which is a neurologic condition that can result from vaccines, who's the other severe reaction? I'm blanking on the other severe reaction. Oh, hospitalization due to a reaction to the vaccine. So looking at severe reactions and looking how likely is it that in your lifetime you'll get struck by lightning. My mother actually was struck by lightning when I was a child, so she was fine, but nonetheless, that's 1 in 12,000. Severe reaction to the vaccine, those three things that I named, is 1 in 1 million. So the likelihood you'll get hospitalized, you'll have anaphylaxis, or Guillain-Barré is 1 in 1 million.
On the influenza vaccine, let's say you get the new strain come out in September and you take it then. Does it ever wear off?
Yes.
You get a second one.
Right. That's a great question. So there's no data, or there's little data on that. They looked at it in patients who have been transplant recipients. I don't know if anyone here is a transplant recipient. So in transplant recipients, because of the immunosuppression, they looked at response to vaccine and how long it lasts. And yes, it will wear off in approximately 3 months. So there is there is rationale to get vaccinated in September and then to get vaccinated again in December or January, because the season may last through, March or April. So they haven't looked at it in immunocompetent patients, so they haven't really looked at it in children. I tried to get my baby revaccinated, and my pediatrician refused to give it because they said then there's going to be less vaccines for other children, because there are, some years there's a limitation on how many vaccines they have available. And there have been years that I remember where vaccines ran out and people were still trying to get them. But that's a great question. So certainly if you're a transplant recipient, there is data that suggests you should get revaccinated.
Are there degrees of immunosuppression? In other words, a lung transplant recipient, is their immunosuppression more powerful than someone who's pre-transplant or pre-lung who's taking immunosuppressants? Say for instance, I have rheumatoid arthritis and I'm immunosuppressed, prednisone and Celsep and probably Rituxan and some other things.
That's a great question. From my experience working with the lung transplant group, lung transplant recipients are probably the most immunocompromised of any patient other than a bone marrow transplant recipient, and that's in the short term after transplant. Certainly we use higher doses of immunosuppression for lung transplant than they do in kidney transplant or even heart transplant. There's varying degrees, of course, for connective tissue disease. I have some patients that are on very low doses of Celsep and no prednisone. That's much different than the person who's on rituximab and high doses of Celsep and prednisone 50 milligrams every so often. So there's different degrees, but no one's looked at influenza revaccination for them, unfortunately, or antibody titers and what those do over time. So I think that's just really unknown. I think if you, number one, if you do get the vaccine, I think it's, what we used to do in our clinic was have people wait until about October 15th, or by the end of October. We wouldn't have them get it September 10th when it came out if there was word from the CDC that they didn't have a shortage of vaccines. So you don't want to wait too long and then they run out. But recently there's been no shortage of vaccines, so that's been good. But we would have people wait till kind of later in the season to get vaccinated so that it tried to last through the end of the season. The other strategy would be get it when it first comes out and get it again in January. Those are probably the two strategies. And with Rituxan, I don't know how many people are on Rituxan in here, but Rituxan will impair your ability to respond to a vaccine a lot. So if you're about to get a dose of Rituxan, you should get your vaccine before you get that dose, because after your blood will have no response, essentially. But great questions. So with influenza vaccine, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about this because I think it's important. We'll talk about the efficacy, what the overall benefit is. Yes, question.
Just to clarify, so if we have not had a lung transplant, we just have the condition of, or not IPF, but PF, then it is a good idea if you can to get vaccinated twice within the season?
It's very controversial. There's no data to say that you should get vaccinated twice. If you're immunocompromised, meaning that you're on immunosuppression, and some people are and some people aren't, it's very reasonable to get the vaccine twice.
Okay, thank you.
Because you would extrapolate that from the data for transplant recipients. Because some of those medications are very similar.
Thank you.
Talk about some of the limitations and side effects of the vaccine. And there's a lot of vaccines available. Until I was looking into this, I actually didn't realize how many different vaccines there are. And unfortunately, the CDC gives us no guidance on which vaccines are better for anyone. But we'll talk a little bit about what's available and what is probably reasonable. So this is the effectiveness of the seasonal flu vaccine from 2008 to 2018. The way that they run this data makes vaccines look really bad in regards to how effective they are. But the way that they get this number of efficacy is they look at, they have I think it's 12 centers across the U.S. that see outpatients, and that for every swab, which is the most sensitive viral swab. And for all comers, they look at who tested positive for flu as opposed to another virus. And of those people that tested positive for flu, how many of them got vaccinated? So it's not a prospective trial where they say, we're going to follow 1,000 people that get vaccinated and see who gets exposed and who gets the flu virus. So the methodology is a little flawed. But you can see here that the variability of how effective the vaccine is each year is a lot. So the best years is like 60%. So you reduce your risk by about 60% if you get the vaccine that you're going to get the flu. And this is mild flu versus severe flu. There's no distinction in this data. And last year you can see it's 40%. The data so far for this year is that the vaccine has been really good and it's in the 60s. And for children, it's actually in the 80s. So the vaccine for kids is really good, which is for herd immunity. And what we really need as a society is the best way to prevent us from getting the flu is actually to prevent kids from getting the flu. Because they spread it to everyone when they get it. So this data, like when you see this, looks like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is how bad the flu vaccine is. But I'll show you something in a minute that makes you think a little bit better about the flu vaccine. And this is just a different format. This is like kind of the adjusted efficacy, ranging from as bad as 10% effective to as good as like 60% effective. However, I think the important issues with the flu vaccine lay here, which is that there's been multiple different studies that have looked at this in different ways. This is just one of the studies I pulled, but they all show the same thing, which is that if you get the vaccine and you still get the flu, that the severity of the flu you get is attenuated, meaning that you're much less likely to wind up in the hospital or in the ICU from the flu. So in this one study here, they showed that you're 37% less likely to end up in the hospital if you get the flu, if you've had the vaccine. You're 82% less likely to end up in the ICU if you get the flu and you already had the vaccine. So what are the limitations of the flu vaccine? We'll talk about side effects in a minute, but limitations are that it doesn't cover a bazillion other things that can give you a flu-like illness, which is parainfluenza is a little bit less severe form of a flu-like illness. It's not influenza, the virus is different. But the flu vaccine doesn't cover this at all. It doesn't cover RSV, which is respiratory syncytial virus. It doesn't cover the common cold. It doesn't cover adenovirus. Human metapneumovirus is a very similar virus to RSV. And there are no vaccines for these viruses. They worked on an RSV vaccine for a long time because that's the number one viral illness that kills small children and babies. And the vaccine was very problematic in the 70s. People died after getting the vaccine, and so they took it off the market, and it's been very difficult for them to safely develop an RSV vaccine since then. And what about the flu shot makes me sick, so I'm not going to get it. And I have many patients in my office that tell me this, and I say, okay, well, that's your decision, I'm fine. But this is, and it can definitely make you sick. I didn't feel well for 24 hours after I got my vaccine, but I also didn't get influenza pneumonia and ended up in the ICU. So I'm like, oh, trade-off. But the most common side effects of the flu shot are soreness, redness, and tenderness where the shot was given. Low-grade fever, headache, muscle aches can also occur. If these reactions occur, they usually start within 1 to 2 days and they last for a day or two. In randomized blinded studies, when some people got the inactivated flu shot and others got saltwater shots, the only differences in symptoms was increased soreness of the arm and redness in the injection site among people who got the flu shot. There were actually no differences in body aches, fever, cough, runny nose, or sore throat. And this is not the biggest study ever, but it showed that there really wasn't a big difference. Which vaccine should you get? There's a lot of different vaccines, and I've listed most of them here on the bottom left. But the CDC, which is kind of the governing body of what tells doctors how to take care of patients from an infection standpoint, from a disease control standpoint, there's no guidance as to what vaccine you should get. They actually say that this is American College of Infectious Practitioners or something like that. They recommend an annual flu vaccine for everyone, 6 months or older, with an appropriate influenza vaccine, with no preference given for any one vaccine as opposed to Now, why are there so many different vaccines? So these were kind of, first there was a trivalent vaccine. You can still get this vaccine. It's very cheap. It's like, I think they produce it for like less than 50 cents a vial to have a trivalent vaccine. This covers 2 strains of influenza A and 1 strain of influenza B. The quadrivalent covers, and this is one that we actually stock in our clinic, the quadrivalent vaccine covers 2 influenza A's and 2 influenza B strains. And this is not the high dose. There's the high dose Fluzone vaccine. The difference between this one and this one is that this is 4 times the antigen in the vaccine, but it's also only a trivalent vaccine. It only has 2 strains of A and 1 strain of B. This egg-free trivalent vaccine for people with a severe, life-threatening egg allergy is called Flublok, and it's only available for people between the ages of 18 and 49. So if you have an egg allergy, you're a child or you're an older adult, you can't get it, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense for vaccinating people. This Flublok vaccine is kind of interesting. It's fairly new. And it's actually meant for the same group of people, which is over the age of 65, that the high-dose flu vaccine is meant for. But instead of having 4 times the antigen in it, it has an adjuvant protein that increases the inflammatory response to the dead viral particles. If I were over 65 and I had to choose between the ones that you can choose from, I would choose this one right here. Probably not this one because of that adjuvant protein that's in it, there's been a lot more adverse reactions reported. Nothing life-threatening, but still I think it's, if you're going to go for one that's for ages 65 and above, I would take the high-dose flu vaccine. I think that you're okay with doing the trivalent rather than the quadrivalent because the influenza B infection tends to be much less severe than the influenza A infections that you can get. And then this used to be available. They're now recommending, they still carry it in some states, but they're recommending against it. This is a live vaccine, the nasal spray vaccine, and no one in this room should get a live vaccine. Yes.
So if I'm going to my Walgreens or CVS, I could ask for Fluzone.
High dose Fluzone. Yeah. So this last year there were 2 Fluzones. They're the same company that either make the quadrivalent, which is anyone can get it. You can get it if you want, but for people over 65, they want the high dose Fluzone. So many of you would recommend this one here. Any more questions about the?
That was the same question.
Oh, okay, great. So now moving on to pneumococcal vaccines. There's 2. So there's the Prevnar, which is also called pneumococcal 13-valent, and there's the pneumococcal 23-valent. And that was the old one, pneumococcal 23. It's been around for over 20 years, and it's for adults. Prevnar 13 has been around for a long time, but for the longest time it's only given to children in their series of vaccines. And then just about 4 years ago it was approved for adults. And now the recommendations have changed a lot. Like you used to be told, get the pneumococcal vaccine every 5 years, and that's an old recommendation. The new recommendation is that after the age of 65, you should get one and then the other. The preference is 13 and then a year later to get the 23. And then there's a lot of different kind of caveats on that because some offices don't offer the 13, so they give the 23, but then you're still supposed to wait about a year to give the 13. The caveat on this is if you're being evaluated for transplant and you haven't had any of these vaccines, you should get both of them separated by 8 weeks. That's the closest you can state them. But if anyone's kind of going through that evaluation, that's the guidelines from the IDSA for that. That's also you don't have to be 65 to get this, so if you have a chronic lung condition, you should get these 2 vaccines, even if you're 20. Yes.
I went through this about 4 years ago, and I don't recall whether I got both. I know that I got the 13.
Okay.
But I don't remember there was confusion I was told to get 2, and then I said something because I think in the clinic, I said you just need 1, don't worry about the second one, or something like that. So I'm not sure. Could and I know I got the 13, should I get 23?
It's probably reasonable, and it's not gonna hurt you to get it. I mean, if you can pull up, if you can find a record, or sometimes CVS keeps them on file, if you get them there, you can try to dig and see if there's a record of it, but it's not gonna hurt you to get the 23 again, even if you got it. And I've had one patient who got, I don't know what they were thinking exactly, but they gave like both of them, they gave a 13 and a 23 at the same time. And there's no, I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, not sure, like, was it one take and one not? Or, there's no guidelines on that, but yeah, for you, it would be fine to get the 23 again.
So this is in addition to the flu?
Yes, so this is for Streptococcus pneumonia, which is the most common cause of bacterial pneumonia. And so that's completely different infection. And these are not given every year, so you just get 1 of each, and then you're done. If you got them both, before you're 65, well before you're 65, then it's probably reasonable to maybe get them again after 65, but there's not good recommendations on that.
So if you're not sure if you have the first one, I tried to find my records and I don't know if I have it or not. So I should just start with that one then, because
You should just read, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I should start by taking the 13 first.
Correct, yeah, the recommendations now are 13 first if you haven't had any, and then a year later the 23.
Even if you're not sure if you've had it before. Okay.
Yeah, if you think you might not have had them, then that's very reasonable. It won't hurt you to do them again. And no one, it's kind of interesting though, it's probably because it's an attenuated bacteria, not a virus. No one really gets reactions to these vaccines. At least I've not seen it. I'm sure there's somebody who has in the past. Maybe a local reaction, but usually not a systemic, like full-body reaction.
Before they would put me on the transplant list, I had to have both of them.
Right. And if you're going for a transplant, you can get them 8 weeks apart.
Yeah, that's what they did with mine.
Right. So we'll move on to other ways to prevent infection. Looks like we're doing okay on time. Is that right, Shelley? Are we okay on time? Okay. So hand washing. So in the hospital, if we don't wash our hands, we get trouble. There's people that walk around and monitor, which the doctors and nurses are washing their hands. It's on the posters like it's the best way to prevent infection. But in reality, it's not perfect. It's 16 to 21% reduces the risk, so relative risk reduction of about 1 in 5. So I'm not saying don't wash your hands. Yes, please wash your hands for sure, because you do want to decrease your risk, but it's not perfect, and that's why we should talk about all the other things that can help you reduce your risk of infection. Masks. I've seen tons of patients on masks. When I worked in transplant, all of my patients wore a mask, especially from October to April. Everyone wore a mask in the clinic, and I supported that. We taught that. Our coordinators taught people to wear their masks. But when I went to look through the data to see how effective it is, the data is there's very, very little data on whether masks are effective or not. And it's not to say you shouldn't wear them, but they have shown that for sure that people who are living with a family member that has the flu, that it is effective in that regard. So we know in some ways that they are effective. We know also in healthcare workers that are exposed to any respiratory virus that wearing a mask is effective. So we know that there is data for efficacy, and so we could extrapolate that to say that if you're going to be out in public with a large group of people at church or a meeting like this, it's reasonable to wear a mask. But the community studies that they've done, there's only 2 that I could find, have actually not shown a benefit. In regards to healthcare workers, so respiratory viruses are spread through droplet particles, which are pretty large. So the masks that everyone's wearing in here that are like the surgical masks, those are perfect for preventing respiratory droplets from inhaling them. They can still hit your eyes, unfortunately, which is the eyes are a very For this, you shouldn't touch, you should be really conscious not to touch your eyes. It's really any time is a very common way to transmit viruses. But for healthcare workers, when someone has a respiratory infection, we have to wear gloves and a mask, and that is known to be protective. For any of you who, this is off topic for sure, but since we're talking about masks, the surgical masks are good for that type of exposure. The surgical masks are pretty worthless when you're dealing with dust particles, which are much smaller than a respiratory droplet. So if you're cleaning your garage and sweeping and everything, the surgical mask, you might as well not wear anything. You really need an N95 mask or a respirator. And the N95 masks are really easy to find online or Home Depot or Lowe's. So those really thick ones that you'll sometimes see like painters wear. We have those in the hospital to prevent tuberculosis transmission, which is not a respiratory droplet, it's like airborne. But those are the two masks you should get in, or a respirator or an N95 mask if you're dealing with like dust particles. So, yes.
So, on masks, which I think we've got interesting, a lot of our members wear these BOG masks, which are, what I hear from you basically, save money.
Right. So if they're, I don't know the VOD masks, so I'm not sure what the particle size they allow through are. What's that?
It's N95.
It is an N95. Okay. So yeah, those are good. Yes, those are good. This is getting into technicalities, but if you purchase an N95 mask, they should be NIOSH certified. That's NIOSH, and that's the governing body of occupational health, because it's typically people that work in dusty, dirty environments that should be wearing these masks, but they work really well for doing your garage cleaning or whatever. But thanks, I wasn't familiar with that. So we're going to talk for a little bit about other ways of potentially preventing infection. And this is, we're now getting into areas that conventional doctors are not that well trained in, and I didn't learn it in medical school for sure. I learned it along the way, but these are potentially ways that you can help your immune system naturally fight off or be stronger, both your innate and your what they call adaptive immune system, which is your antibody system and everything. So first we'll talk about vitamin D, and I'm sure this is no foreign topic to any of you because it's been very popular in the last 5 to 10 years. So this is, so the first studies, starting probably when I was in medical school, looked at vitamin D levels and how they correlated with health. And they found in almost every study that was done, whether it was about asthma or diabetes or you name it, like every study found that low vitamin D levels are associated with work outcomes. People that had higher vitamin D levels did better, whether or not they had the disease, they did better if they had higher vitamin D levels. And that led everyone to skeptics to say, well, maybe the asthmatic that has really bad asthma can't go outside because they're so sick, and maybe the healthy asthmatic goes outside a lot to get vitamin D, which is, I think that's a reasonable critique of all of those studies. Those studies were really popular in the late 90s, early 2000s, showing that low vitamin D levels correlated with worse outcomes and high vitamin D levels correlated with good outcomes. And it's not until recently, and the trials are there's not very many, looking at whether or not giving someone vitamin D to make their levels normal improves their health. And so these are very small studies, and most of them have been done in kidney failure, actually. But if you look at infections in particular, they're not bad. So this is a randomized trial of vitamin D supplementation to prevent seasonal influenza A in school children. This reduced the rate of influenza by 33% in school kids, which I have kids that are young, and I'm giving them vitamin D. I'm giving them October to April, I'm giving them vitamin D. But this was it was actually a small supplement, and they actually didn't even look at whether their levels were low and how much they improved how much their vitamin D level improved with supplementation, but it was a dose of 400 units a day, prevented the flu in school kids. This is an interesting study done in Finland where they took military recruits, and I think in Finland it's kind of like getting sick while they're going through this rigorous training. And so let's give them vitamin D. The vitamin D supplementation for them was higher, it was 1,000 units a day. And they reduced the rate of acute respiratory tract infection. This isn't just flu, it's any upper respiratory tract infection. They reduced the rate by 40%, which was pretty impressive. And the other things that they found was that it attenuated any illnesses they got. So out of the group that got infections, their URIs lasted about 10 days. And the group that was on the vitamin D, their URIs lasted on average 5 days, like 5.6 days or something like that. So it prevented infections, and it also made people who got infections have a less severe infection. There's also some interesting scientific work that looks at, why do we have the flu vaccine? Why do we get the flu in the winter? And there's some theories that it actually correlates directly with vitamin D, because the nadir of our, if you just have someone that doesn't take a supplement and follow their vitamin D levels over a year, like we test them monthly every year, the lowest level in anyone that lives a little bit far from or a certain distance from the equator, the lowest level is in February. And so that's actually when we see the peak incidence of influenza. So it's kind of an interesting theory. I can go on about vitamin D and how it prevents MS and some other things, but I think for infection, it's definitely interesting. And vitamin D is safe. The thing I will say, let me see if I have another slide of vitamin D or not. Yes, so I did put this slide here. So when someone says, should I take vitamin D? I said, well, I don't know. What's your level? Has your doctor checked your vitamin D level? Because if you have a vitamin D level that's 50 or 60, then you probably shouldn't take vitamin D, because then you're going to get hypercalcemia, which is high calcium, and then you're not going to be well because of that. So you should probably get your level checked. Most people that you check are low, so if you took all comers and said try to take vitamin D, then most people do need it, especially in the winter months. The darker your skin is, the more likely you are to be deficient, because the melanin prevents vitamin D absorption from the sun. So get your levels checked. Optimal levels are probably between 40 and 60, although the recommendations for every society that recommends what your level should be are different in every society. But optimal levels, if you look at kind of the research about who was the healthiest, it's probably between that range of 40 to 60. You're considered deficient if it's less than 20. And in these patients, you can consider high dose, short-term high dose, which is like the 50,000 units a week dose. If you're insufficient, which is like the 20 to 40 range, then a lower units per day is probably reasonable. There are some people that argue getting over 50 is better, but I think 40 to 60 is probably most people, most of the literature lies. The recommendation for this vitamin D is vitamin D3. It's the active form of vitamin D. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. So if you're going to take it, you're going to take it with food, or with something fatty, like some nuts with it, or eat something that has fat in it. There's the drop. There's some that come in oil drops, and they're thought to be better absorbed. Carlson's for children, it's like 400 units per drop. So I'm making it take that because it's really cheap, and you can get a bottle at Amazon that lasts like 2 years. This one is there's some people that study bone health and calcium absorption into the bone. I actually recommend to take K2 with vitamin D3 to help with the bones, putting mineral into the bone. However, I will say about K2 is ask your doctor before you do this, because vitamin K will increase some people's clotting, will increase blood clotting in some people. So just be careful with the vitamin K. All right, so who knows the NAC story about IPF in here? I'm sure there's some people in the front that know the NAC story. So I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about NAC, or N-acetylcysteine, as an antioxidant to prevent respiratory infections. Again, the literature is not full of studies that are thousands of people big. The studies are pretty small, but the ones that have been done are pretty, I think, very intriguing and thought-provoking, and probably need to be looked at studies with vitamins and supplements. It's mainly because there's no money to be had. Most of our big clinical trials are funded by big pharma, for better or worse, and there's no money to make on these things. They can't patent NAC because it's not a medication that's available widely. This is a very interesting study that was done really well. It was done in Singapore, but they did it in a large nursing home, and they gave for 6 months, for 6 winter months in Singapore, they gave half of their nursing home ward NAC 600 milligrams twice a day, and half of the ward placebo, and they looked at rates of influenza-like episodes. So this wasn't necessarily flu A or flu B. This was just like a bad respiratory virus. They looked at a few things. It was really very, very well articulated study. But they looked at not only did they get sick, but also what their antibody titers were to the virus. And 79% of the patients actually seroconverted, meaning that they were exposed and they showed an antibody to the flu. Even these people in the dark bars that didn't get sick actually had been exposed by blood draw, that they showed that they had been exposed. But much more of the patients on placebo actually showed a viral-like illness. And what these little bars represent is that month 2, the 20-something% of the patients on placebo got a flu-like illness, and about 12% of the patients on NAC got a flu-like illness. The third month, 30% of people on placebo, and still about 12% of people on NAC got a flu-like illness. Now, does this mean you should take NAC? I don't know. I'm going to talk a little bit later about treatment. There's definitely also some interesting treatment work that shows that maybe NAC is a way to attenuate the virus once you get it. NAC is pretty well tolerated. Few people will complain of some nausea or upset stomach with taking NAC. And I can't say that this one study says that you should take NAC all winter, but it is very intriguing. And I think it's at least worth considering, and we probably should look into it further. And unfortunately, the Panther IPS study where they looked at NAC versus placebo, they didn't look at acute illnesses in that study.
I do not try to play your doctor. But there was a study done in Cleveland Clinic about 4 years ago. Small study, 47 patients. And what they found out, there's a subset of people that are actually harmed by NAC, pulmonary disease. Where there's others. I've been taking it personally for 8 years. And I take it because it's a great glutathione, which is an antioxidant. It's a number one resource for that. And secondly, it's a mucoid, which thins out the mucus. You have less coughing. And I swear by it. I take 3 of those 600 a day.
Yeah, and that's the Panther IPF, that was the dose, and that was the dose we used before that study came out, was 600 3 times a day.
This is interesting because when I first was diagnosed, and I came to Baylor, I met with the doctor who's since retired, at least from pulmonary practice. But anyway, I said, what can I do right now to help myself? He said, start taking 600 milligrams of NAC 3 times a day. And I did that. I did that for 5 years. But this past year, I've been having a complaint about tremendous amount of mucus production. I have allergies, so I have a lot of cough. I have a wet cough. So anyway, I was talking to my doctor recently, and she went over my supplements. And she said, I'm seeing you're taking NAC. And I just described the reason why I was taking it, the same reason the bill described, because the rationale for taking it was not given to me, but Bill provided that to me. So I said, well, it tends to be this, and it's good antioxidant. But it was causing, it wasn't causing, I suspected it might cause. My doctor said he found that her patients with pulmonary disease that take it, some it helps and some it actually aggravates. It turns out that it aggravates mine. So I discontinued taking it, and I'm better. My cough is getting less, it works. It's still productive, but I don't cough so much, don't produce as much mucus as I was. So it's anecdotally
it's interesting, I mean, if we could look at everyone's genetics, and, like Bill might be someone with that TOLIP genetic, like 25% of the population has that. He might be someone with that genetic change that makes it benefit him, and you probably don't have it. The PFWarrior IPF study also did show a trend toward increased cardiac events, which was concerning. It was not quite statistically significant, but very close. And so that raised a lot of eyebrows. So what NAC is essentially, it's sort of like glutathione. It gets converted to glutathione in the liver. And most diseases that have studied it show that there's a decreased amount of glutathione in the lung tissue of people with chronic lung diseases, including IPF. But certainly it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done, if anyone's going to do it, on whether NAC, well, it looks like PFWarrior is going to do the work in people, particularly with the TOLIP mutation.
Just an aside, my husband's yeast production is tremendous. He was part of this study at the University of Colorado for people with pulmonary fibrosis that do have a lot of yeast production. And I think he's one of the ones that had that genetic defect, MUC5 or whatever. It was. And so, yeah, his cough is very productive. So NAC was really irritating that making him just cough all the time. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons he's got the defect.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of you bring up good points, which is what works for some people does definitely not work for everyone. And if it's making you worse, then we need to stop it. It's tricky to figure out what.
I was also taking a big wad of supplements. I was taking all kinds of things I thought were helping. And so I pared back everything when I stopped taking NAC. I started discontinued taking a lot of supplements. And I'd only supplement something that was indicated by a vitamin or something.
Right. I think those are really helpful. Like vitamin E is a great example, but you can get a vitamin available like almost every vitamin that's in your body. They aren't done in a lot of like hospital labs or even Quest. You can't get some of them done, but there are panels out there that are helpful. Was there another question? Do you have a question?
I was just wondering, how do you know if you're the person that it will help and if you're the person that it won't help?
Right now, you don't. That's the problem. Unless you can choose to have your own genome sequence, which is popular right now. It's called 23andMe, and I don't know if anyone in the room's done it. I haven't done it, but it's somewhat affordable now, and you can find out if you have that TOLIP mutation.
What is it you're saying?
TOLIP, TOLLIP. So you can look into that if you want. If you have pulmonary fibrosis and you take OFEV, you can join the new study that's going to be coming out, and you can find out that way if you have it or not.
I don't do OFEV. I'm an autoimmune. Azathioprine.
Azathioprine, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm on.
Yeah, I don't have the information here, but there was a small study done in like 86 patients with scleroderma ILD, giving them high doses of IV NAC, and it showed a benefit at the end of 14 weeks. But this was it was IV NAC, which is not offered anywhere that I'm aware of. There probably is that population in any lung disease where it's going to help some people and it's not going to help or hurt other people, probably even with that disease, unfortunately.
A friend of mine who's a patient in Washington, D.C., he said he's taking his NAC and he inhales it. Is that any different? Because I don't see where your liver has a chance to metabolize it.
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know if he's taking inhaled NAC or glutathione, so you can actually get liquid glutathione and you can nebulize that. It's been looked at in cystic fibrosis. I don't know that it's been looked at in IPF or not, but it's been looked at in COPD, and they didn't show a statistical benefit. But you can nebulize the active form of NAC. Yes.
I have never heard of that, and I'm wondering, is it over the counter or is it a prescription?
It's over the counter. It's a supplement. So there's a lot of, if we get to it, I'll talk about supplements kind of in general, but there's a ton of, really 50 brands that make NAC. And so you want to be choose to try it. And when I say try, I think the point is that you don't know if it's going to help you or not until you take it.
One of the things, I need the answer, doctor, if it helps you to keep on it, then you know.
Right.
One of the things that I discovered, I'm also just recovering from
Prostatectomy?
I ended up with prostate cancer.
Okay.
But in my journey with that, when I started running down to my urologist, the drugs that I was taking, I said, I take NAC. And he said, does it have, excuse me, not NAC. I was taking multiple vitamins, and it has selenium in it. And I was getting that confused with NAC. But I noticed that NAC comes bundled with selenium in it. So what I did is I had to find NAC. Once I found out that selenium is harmful to prostate cancer, because it's like fuel on fire. So the urologist, oncologist told me to not take selenium. So I took it. It was in my multivitamin. It was also in my NAC. So I discontinued that. So you can get that NAC without selenium.
I think most of the NAC probably does come without it, but just because we use
Actually, in my health food store where I buy my NAC, all of it that they had, except for their store brand, came with
that's interesting.
selenium.
That's not what I've seen, but I
Just shopping, for it.
Yeah, that's
I ended up
interesting.
with one brand, which is store brand.
Right, interesting. Is there another, yes, in the back?
Could you repeat what you said about LV? I did have that completed for me and my son. So what you say I should look for?
So you can find out if you have so there's two copies of every gene. So you can find out the TOLLIP, that's TOLLIP. You can find out what amino acid you have at each of those TOLLIP genes. And so it's either CC or CC, GG, or then you can have GT. So you can look at what amino acid you have at the TOLLIP, and you can find out whether or not your gene is someone that it would help to take NAC. And I'm linking on if you have a homozygous, when you have two copies of I think it's the CC. If you have two copies of CC, then you would be helped the most by NAC. If you have one copy and one of the other, then you would be helped moderately by NAC. In theory, there may be people out there who notice a cost benefit from it that don't have that. So that hasn't been looked at enough to say, one way or the other. So this is something I've only more recently learned about. So this is large arabinogalactin, and it oftentimes is just that second name. It's just the arabinogalactin. This is just fiber. This is a fiber supplement from a particular tree. And some of you may or may not know that fiber is thought to be now a prebiotic, meaning that your colon needs fiber for the good bacteria to live off of. That's how our lactobacillus and bifidobacterium live, is off of the fiber we consume. Metamucil, which is psyllium fiber, is a prebiotic, and why it probably helps with bowel movements and things like that. So this is a recent review of the literature. So I looked at a lot of small studies about the arabinogalactin, and the one that I found had been positive. It was really interesting to find this review. So this article here, which is, you can see the kind of reference at the bottom, but at the top, sorry. This review talks about all the studies that have been done so far on this fiber supplement. And what they showed is a modest reduction in cold or upper respiratory infections. There was approximately 20% reduction in cold episodes, or how many times you get infected with the cold. About 20%. Duration of cold symptoms was about the same in people that got the cold. Everything else was kind of a wash, but the main thing was that if they looked at all the studies that have been done, is that overall they seem to reduce incidence of cold infections by about 20%. The studies are small, and and they are in healthy individuals. And so unfortunately, they can't make any conclusions about what does, if you choose to take this fiber supplement long term, are there ill health effects? None that have been seen so far. But again, it's like kind of like medications. It's like if you put enough people on medication, you'll find some side effects for some people. And the literature with it is really low. The way I actually found out about it and started looking into it is that it's safe for children. So I think if it's safe to give to kids that are 2, it's probably safe to give to people that are 80 or whatever. But and again, it's just a fiber supplement. And the dose that was used in all of these different studies was somewhere between 1.5 and 4.5 grams a day. I think that's all I have to say about arabinogalactin.
You get the same effect from mucins or psyllium?
It doesn't look like psyllium. Yeah, it doesn't look like Metamucil has the amino support, or at least not that it's shown. This fiber supplement we have.
In the place of if you're using Metamucil,
You could trade it, yeah. So it's
you can use it instead.
yeah. So the other things that I do, because it's not the subject of the talk, but it does increase regularity. But there have been not any dangerous adverse effects. But some people have really bad gas with it, just like they have, just like with some people with Metamucil will get really bad gas from psyllium. So that's definitely one of the known side effects. But you could replace it if you already take psyllium fiber. So that transitions me into probiotics, which is, in my opinion, based on the literature that I've seen, the reason this might work is actually the exact same reason that probiotics are helpful, and that is that you're augmenting your immune system through your gut microbiome. And I don't know if anyone here follows the work of Alessio Fasano, but I was fortunate enough to know him when I was a resident at University of Maryland. He now is at Mass General, and he's done some really amazing work in discovering what the microbiome is and what it does for us. And it probably is related to many, many, many disease processes. What he's proven so far is that it is related to things of the gut, so ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, celiac disease. And then his next work, you can actually find his work on autoimmune disease now, which is extremely fascinating. And I think his theories are kind of the future of where autoimmune disease is going. But probiotics have been shown in a lot of studies in children and in adults to actually decrease rates of infection. And there's a study from children showing that if a child's starting to get sick and you add probiotics to their diet, that they will recover quicker from the infection. And then I'll talk in a second about probiotics because they're not helpful necessarily for everyone, and there can be complications from them. This is what this stands for is this is a Spanish article actually looking at, they call it symbiotic formulations. It's the same as probiotics, but looking at how many infections people get when they're taking these. So IRA stands for respiratory infection acute, but it's done in Spain. So they looked at rates of infection. This was over the period of a year. So the rates of infections were high because we get on average 2 to 4 colds a year. 82% in the placebo arm got an acute upper respiratory tract infection as opposed to 63% of the people that were taking the probiotic. And they break it down into upper respiratory tract infections versus lower respiratory tract infections. They both show significance, so p-values don't mean whether they're significant or not. But they did show in the study that rates of infections were lower in people who were taking probiotics. Now, the caveat of probiotics before I go to the next study is that if you are immunocompromised, there's an asterisk next to whether or not you should take probiotics, because there have been case reports you can find on PubMed of people who took probiotics and got a bacteremia, means a bacterial infection in their bloodstream, or who became very ill as a result of taking most of its bacteremia. There was one person who actually got endocarditis that was the same bacteria that was in the probiotic they were taking. So those are case reports. There was a study done at the Cleveland Clinic by one of my colleagues, infectious disease colleagues, work with at Hopkins, who she headed up the study, but they actually looked at renal transplant patients, so people that were immunosuppressed and who had C. diff colitis, which is a bad infection of the colon. And they gave all these patients probiotics and prevented the recurrence of C. diff 55% by giving them probiotic strains. And this is in people who are definitely immunocompromised because of their renal transplants. And the way that they, when I asked her how they justified doing that in immunocompromised hosts who had been, when there's been case reports of people getting infections from probiotics, she said that the risk of them getting C. diff was so high, it was so much higher than the risk of them getting an infection from a probiotic, which has only been rarely reported in the literature, that that's the way they justified it. So, again, food for thought. I'm not saying that you should all take a probiotic by any means, but it is interesting data. This is a meta-analysis. What meta-analysis are like, where they take as many studies as they can in the literature, and they try to condense them into one study and say, like, what did it show? They showed a very mild benefit in children for preventing acute respiratory infections. Very mild benefit about occurrences, about how many infections can you prevent by giving probiotics. So if they're to the left of the one, that means that probiotics were in favor. If the studies are to the right of the one, that means placebo is in favor. And these are all the individual studies. And this little diamond at the bottom is the summary of all the studies. And so they showed a mild benefit in kids with probiotics preventing acute respiratory tract infections. All right, yes.
Probiotic, this capsule that's got stuff in it, taken before. Is that what the studies were using?
Some of them. So in kids, a lot of them use, you give probiotics in a powder form to you. They use it in a lot of the studies for kids were in a powder form where they sprinkle it over their food or add it to their milk.
I was kind of alarmed when you said that it could actually cause infections, because I'm a big user of probiotics, but it's naturally occurring, like in yogurt and buttermilk, things like that. That's the way I get mine. Now, I had taken capsules before, but I was taking so many supplements and those capsules. I was just taking like a double handful of pills a day, so I discontinued that. But I do use kefir, yogurt, and things like that. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
Is there any significant correlation between taking naturally occurring?
I haven't seen it reported of anyone that took like kefir, Yucca, and all these different things that have probiotics, and I haven't seen anything reported in that. The doses are much lower in naturally occurring probiotics than if you're taking a supplement, which can get up to 100 billion CFP, which are super, super high doses. Most of the kids' formulations are somewhere between 1 billion or 5 billion, so they're pretty low comparatively. And then if you're taking, the kefir is actually like 100 times higher in dose than even yogurt is, but there's not been any reports that I've seen that you can get an infection from those.
Kefir also has two different lactobacillus.
What's that, sorry?
Kefir has two additional lactobacillus that are in the swallow.
Interesting. He was saying that there's a lot more variety in kefir than there is in yogurt, which usually have one or two.
Yeah, for me, just anecdotally, because of the drugs that I take, immunosuppressive drugs, particularly Esprit, it's been, everybody complains about lower GI distress. So I have a lot of problems that way, and I find that prebiotics, which I try to use naturally occurring things like fermented foods, like leafy vegetables, things like that, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, it's prebiotic, and then probiotics, kefir, yogurt, things like that. And I find that I'm doing a lot better with lower GI distress.
Oh, great.
And they're useful too.
Yeah, I met a patient
Can
yesterday.
we save some of those questions to the end? Because we got to hear what he's asking, so.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, we can try to get to the end. I have to skip a few slides.
Just like a one-on-one conference there.
So his point was that his lower GI side effects have been better with doing some of the natural probiotics when taking Esprit. Sorry, I'll try to repeat the question whenever I can. And so I'm going to speed up just a bit. So is there a role for vitamin C in preventing infections? Probably in the generally probably not. A lot of negative studies. The few positive studies that have been shown that taking vitamin C extra than what you get out of your diet that have benefited people are people that do very rigorous exercise, like running marathons, that often get sick right after their race. That taking extra vitamin C is helpful in those cases, and that's actually probably because the body loses a lot of vitamin C when people do that strenuous exercise. Extreme temperatures, people that are exposed to extreme cold or extreme heat often lowers their immune response. The vitamin C has been shown to be helpful in those cases, and then smokers. If you smoke, that you actually use a lot of your vitamin C as an antioxidant, and the risk of infections is higher in smokers, so taking vitamin C actually can be helpful. We'll go on to the next treatment, and we may skip a few of the slides just for sake of time, so I want to let you guys go at 12. Treatment, antivirals, which is really the only antiviral we really have is for influenza. Antibacterial antibiotics, which we have a lot of we have a ton of antibacterial antibiotics. Non-pharmacologic treatment, and as Scott points out in the front, that actually there's a lot of things we can do naturally, like through our food, to enhance our immune responses. And I can talk a little bit about this if you guys are interested. But these are some of the more like natural supplements you can take if you get sick. So for influenza, there's been a number of different antivirals that have been approved over the years for influenza. A lot of them have actually now gone out of use because of resistance. The reason we have a new vaccine every single year for influenza is that it mutates at very high rates. And so the strain that we got last year isn't going to cover the strain of the virus this year because the virus has changed so much. Resistance is a big thing with viral infections. So Tamiflu is kind of the mainstay right now of what we use, both in outpatients as well as hospitalized patients for influenza infections. The current recommendation is that they take Tamiflu within 48 hours of getting a symptom, or that you take prophylactic Tamiflu within 48 hours of getting exposed to someone that has the flu. And the dosing is different for those two regimens. However, for people in this room, if you have a chronic lung disease and you get the flu, my recommendation is that you take it at any point. And if you're 3 days out from getting sick, you start it then. If you're 5 days out from getting sick, you start it then. You don't say, well, I didn't get it within the first 48 hours, so I'm not going to take it. Because there has been pretty good data showing that it decreases the severity of the illness. For the general population, if you haven't taken it within 48 hours of getting sick, they say don't take it. But for people in here, I would take it regardless. This is just brand new, approved in October of 18 for the flu in the U.S. This is an interesting one-dose pill that you take one time and then you're done. And it was used last year in Japan above Tamiflu. And it does pretty well. There have unfortunately already been case reports of resistance to it. And so that's where the problem lies. And my guess is that it's going to be on the market for a couple years and they're going to have to pull it because of resistance patterns. Tamiflu's been around for a while and it's held up pretty well to resistance. There have been a few case reports of resistance, but almost all viruses almost all flu viruses are sensitive. And then just natural treatments, using a humidifier. If you smoke, don't smoke when you're sick with the flu. It will make it worse and make you sick longer. Washing your hands and keeping good sanitary practices so you don't pass it on to anyone else. Any questions about treatment of the flu?
I have a question. So if you have a flu or viral infection, how do you know when it's actually finished service? My husband, we might pick up a glass and drink from it, share it. So how do you know
when you're not contagious anymore?
You can't test it out.
It's difficult to know, especially if I don't know if he's immunocompromised, but if you're immunocompromised, you shed the virus longer than if you're, even if you're well and you're immunocompetent. Usually by the time you're well, very safe. If he's asymptomatic and he's been well for a week, he's not contagious. But if he's been well for a day, I still wouldn't drink after him. Yes.
How long does the virus survive back on a donor or whatever?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. On the flu virus in particular, I don't know. There's some suggestion that RSV can survive up to 3 days on inanimate objects. I don't know about the flu virus. I think it's less long, but they can survive a while. Good question. So antibiotics, I think my slide got cut off a little bit, but antibiotics, so there's good and bad about antibiotics. Number one is that they kill bacteria. They don't kill viruses. So if you have a viral infection, and you and your doctor are pretty sure it's a viral infection, taking an antibacterial antibiotic is not going to help you. There's certainly a lot to be said that people in this room are very, it's risky. If you have an infection and then, let's say you get the flu, there's a chance you can get a bacterial infection after that because your immune defenses are down. So we still often give antibiotics for respiratory infections, but there's risks and benefits of taking an antibiotic. What I tell a lot of my patients is if they're feeling like they're getting better each day, then let's hold off on the antibiotic. If it's been 5 days and they're still not getting better or they're getting worse, then that's getting worse is a bad sign if you had an infection. The worst should be that for those first 3 days is when it should be the worst. It shouldn't, after 3 days, it should start getting slowly better. If it's not, then you might need an antibiotic. Problems with antibiotics, resistance, both in the person that takes them as well as the community. And there's all these superbugs now that are resistant to a lot of antibiotics. And then this is another big one. Again, I don't want to harp too much on the microbiome, but if you genetically, if you took all the genes in our body and counted them, and that means in our whole body, if you took all the genes and counted them, human genes account for 1% of that number, and the bacteria that live in our body and on our body account for 99% of that. So you take an antibiotic, you cut it in half because you kill a ton of those bacteria, those good bacteria that live in and on you. And so the downstream effects of that, not 2 weeks from now, but maybe 6 months or a year from now about your health and your immune system may be actually compromised by taking an antibiotic because it's an acute infection. And I won't go into that any further right now. So diet and non-pharmacologic treatments. So top 5 foods. If you get sick, top 5 foods to eat. I won't go into all the supporting literature for this, but poultry is good. It has a good supply of zinc and iron in it. There's some argument that free-range poultry has higher levels of vitamins in it than what they call barn-raised poultry. Chicken noodle soup. There's a fun article that came out back in the early 2000s about how chicken noodle soup actually makes people better. And when they break down all the ingredients, it's probably the vegetables in it that are making people better with the vitamin C and everything. But poultry, kale, has a huge amount of vitamin C in it. Has vitamin K. Don't eat it if you're ruminant because your iron level will go really low with warfarin. It has a ton of vitamin C, vitamin K, and quercetin, which is in a lot of fruits and vegetables, but it's in a really high concentration in kale. Onions, onions have a lot of quercetin. Yogurt, which we talked about the benefits of why yogurt might be beneficial. This is cauliflower here in the center. It has, I'm going to blank on what the beneficial properties are. I've already forgotten on that one. But it has something. It has the same things that broccoli and Brussels sprouts do, plus one other thing. Cruciferous vegetables, right. And then garlic is very interesting. So it has in petri dishes, it has antibacterial and antiviral properties. It will kill viruses and bacteria in the lab on a petri dish, and it has something called allicin in it that in the body gets converted to sulfur. And as we know, sulfur is in a lot of our antibiotics like Bactrim, and there's sulfa drugs out there. However, you would think, like, if I have a bad sulfa allergy, am I going to be allergic to garlic? That's usually not the case because the protein is actually a little bit different. So garlic is actually a very natural antibacterial and antiviral. I think what I'm going to do infection, so maybe it's worthwhile. Zinc, I'm actually a pretty big fan of getting your zinc naturally. These are the things that it's high in. And the studies are mixed. About 6 studies showing that it benefits, 6 studies showing that it didn't benefit people with an acute infection. Elderberry is kind of new to the market. It's become pretty popular, and it probably reduces, maybe mildly reduces your cold duration. And you can get it really easily in like these nice lozenges now. This is,
Just in the name alone, I want some.
yeah, so they sell this, probably in vitamin shops, they sell it at Sprouts and Whole Foods. They have it for kids and adults. And it's made out of this plant here called pelargonium. It's actually an African geranium plant. The only thing about this is that some people are allergic to the plant. So, if you know that you're allergic to geranium or garden, you probably shouldn't take this. If you're going to read one article from this presentation, I actually found this article probably the most interesting. But it talks about how much we actually spend a year on the common cold. And in America, we spend $17 million on the common cold, which is kind of interesting. And then what the author goes into say is that if you're going to spend your money on treatments for the common cold, buy this. I don't think he had any, as far as I can tell, he didn't have any investment in it, but it's a kind of the new thing to combat the common cold. NAC again, there's been some people say that maybe it helps with the symptoms of the common cold. The literature that I reviewed doesn't necessarily support that. Echinacea was also, used to be like, oh, take echinacea to get sick. This is a Cochrane review that reviews all of the literature that's been published about echinacea, and what the Cochrane review says is that it's negative, it doesn't do anything for the common cold. So I put these together because if you're going to take one or the other, I can probably take NAC. The data is a little bit better for that. Astragalus root, and someone stood up in the back and talked about having short telomeres. And the stuff I pulled was actually for infection, but there's a lot of anti-aging work actually looking at astragalus and activating telomerase, which is the enzyme that helps make telomeres longer. And so it's a very interesting plant. The data is extremely small, though, for how much it helps people fight off the common cold. But it's widely available.
That's primarily a traditional Chinese medicine.
It is, yeah. So it's for many years of the traditional Chinese medicine, and actually in the Chinese medical literature, they actually recommend not taking it when you get an acute infection. They actually recommend taking it for health. If you get an acute infection, you shouldn't take it because it traps the virus in the body. But in the small amount of literature that's out there, it actually does show that it probably actually inhibits viral replication. So, again, readily available. This is the dose that we choose to take it.
Ed, do you take that?
Yeah, I sure do.
In my authority, I don't think traditional Chinese medicine.
Symptomatic treatment. I'm a pretty big believer in nebulizers and for IPF, although it's not, it's definitely not the same as like someone responding well to a nebulizer like they do with asthma or even COPD. But for acute infections, I think nebulizers can be helpful from a symptomatic standpoint. Pseudoephedrine is a really great decongestant. However, you cannot take it if you have hypertension. So if you have high blood pressure, don't take pseudoephedrine. But if you don't have trouble with high blood pressure, it's a really great drying agent to kind of dry up your mucus. So in an acute standpoint, not if you have chronic mucus, definitely not use this for that. Neti pots are pretty popular. You can buy them at CVS or anywhere. Typically, you use them with the sterile saline. But there is xylitol, which is a natural, it's a low-calorie sweetener. Has natural antibacterial and antiviral properties, and they actually make a nasal spray out of xylitol called Xear, that's the brand. Or you can actually buy the xylitol crystals, and you can dissolve it in the sterile water, and you can Neti pot wounds with that. kills viruses and kills bacteria. There's some really good data in the ENT literature that shows that using xylitol rinses for chronic sinusitis works pretty well. The studies have been small but positive for it, and it appears to be safe. One caveat is, and I'm sure most of you in this room know this, is don't use tap water to do your sinus rinses because there can be bacteria in tap water. You either have to boil it for 5 minutes and then use it, or buy distilled water at the store. Delsums, I would say most of my patients that like over-the-counter cough syrup like Delsum the most. There's no study showing that Delsum works any better than any other one. And then prescription cough syrups with codeine are very effective. The surgical literature about using opiates, either in acute pain or long-term pain, is that it's an immunosuppressant, is that opiates are an immunosuppressant to neutrophils. And so, it's a great cough syrup that relieves the cough better than any prescription I can write for you. But there is that caveat, is that it probably does cause a little bit of immunosuppression. This is the benzonatate or Tessalon pearl, and then humidifying your air actually can help in an acute illness. So you want to be careful that you're not to wash the humidifier out every day because the standing water can grow fungus or mold in it. So be careful with your humidifiers. Okay, I'm on. I think I'm going to finish in time. This is similar to my very early slide about being cautious about taking herbs or even vitamins. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. Tell your doctor about everything that you take, including any vitamins or supplements. My personal feeling about these is that herbs, whether it's Chinese herbs or whatnot, should be taken in the short term for if you consider taking astragalus or some of the other ones I talked about. You take them for days until your cold symptoms are gone. Vitamins, including NAC, they have been better studied. They've been studied in larger populations of people and for longer periods of time, and have been shown to be safe in most people. I think those are safer to take on a more long-term basis until we have more information about what some of these other things do long-term. Now, astragalus, I think maybe a little bit different if you have short telomeres. There's definitely maybe an argument that the benefit might outweigh the risk of taking something like that long-term. And then I think this is an important point. So there's a ton of things you can buy out there. You can go to Vitamin Shop or GNC or Whole Foods or Sprouts, or you can get online and find thousands of supplements, and they're not FDA regulated. None of the supplements are FDA regulated. So what they say is in them may not be, remember, they may not be in that same dose that you're expecting that you're getting. And then there can be impurities in them that are things that you don't want to be putting into your body. That can also be said, unfortunately, for some of our medications, for people that are valsartan or losartan, that was found, some of them were found to be contaminated in China with carcinogens. So that can, even in FDA-approved things, that could happen. But if you're going to buy supplements or vitamins, you want to look for one of these 3 symbols on the vitamin or supplement that gives you some degree of assuredness that you're getting what you're paying for, and not getting other things that you don't want to be getting. So NSF is a company out of Michigan that will test different vitamins and supplements, and if they pass, they put their label on them. Consumer Lab, you can actually subscribe to Consumer Lab for about $30 a year and read all their reviews. They tend to review things that you can buy at CVS or Walmart or Target, things that are not expensive, and I think it's really fascinating what they find, because you can get some really inexpensive supplements that have what they say they have in them if you pay attention to Consumer Lab. USP is the other one. What USP claims to do is that they say that when they put their mark of certification on there, is that what it says, it has the ingredients listed on the label and the potency and amount that it says it has. specified contaminants. And the specified contaminants is they can't test it for a billion things. They test it for a number of things that are known to sometimes be contaminants. And they say that these, whatever they break down, they're released in the body within a specified amount of time, and that it's been made safely, that the products were made safely. So that's what USP plans to provide. Consumer Lab is very interesting. NSF is more as a newer company that's doing some of the work for certification of different products. So in conclusion, infections are common, potentially dangerous when you have a chronic lung condition like pulmonary fibrosis or interstitial lung disease. There's ways to protect yourself and number one is probably vaccines and healthy living, not smoking, eating right. Maybe, I'm going to say that all these are kind of maybe vitamin D repletion if you're vitamin D deficient will help you protect you from infections. Maybe MAC probiotics, maybe a prebiotic may help. Treatment should be targeted for the problem. So if you have influenza, you should probably take it Tamiflu or maybe the newer one that I forget the Fibrosa. If you have a bacterial infection, antibiotics will help you. But if you don't have a bacterial infection, it might not help you. It might be harmful down the road. Maybe there's some natural remedies that can boost your immune response to infections. Symptomatic treatment just includes rest, drinking plenty of fluids, maybe some of these other things like nebulizer and cold remedies. And definitely take caution with herbal supplements. And if you do take supplements on a regular basis, and probably a lot of you have to do this anyways for other drugs that you're on for your disease, you should have your liver and your kidney function monitored because there have certainly been, and definitely in my training in critical care, I've seen people come to the ICU with liver failure from some herbal supplement that had 20 different things in it, and one of those things caused them to have liver failure. So there's definitely some risk with these things, and being monitored for that as well as your blood work is done for your medications is important as well. With that, I will stop, and I think we're getting close to 12, so if we want to do questions after, I can do that, whatever you feel.
Do you recommend the shingle shot?
Yes, so the Shingrix vaccine, the newer one, is a good vaccine and it's safe. The Zostavax I was a little concerned about for a lot of people because it's a lot. The Zostavax is a live vaccine, and so you can get shingles from it. The Shingrix vaccine is not a live vaccine, and you can't get the shingles from the Shingrix vaccine. The thing about the Shingrix vaccine is that it's expensive, and all insurances don't cover it, and it's also a 2-dose vaccine, so you have to get two doses of it. But I think it's a good vaccine. Yes, sir.
Another thing, just because it's FDA approved doesn't mean it's safe. With the Panther study, that showed that the azathioprine and prednisone was killing more people and putting more people in the hospital, and that's kind of secret.
Yeah, for sure.
Nobody ever points that up.
Yeah, I actually think that's you're totally right. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you.
So if you're undiagnosed, you live longer than if you go to teaching hospital like GC Southwestern and get put on azathioprine and prednisone. So that's just one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more that FDA medications, just because they're FDA approved, definitely does not mean they're safe. I definitely agree with that. And the Panther IPF study, the story of that is very interesting because if you pull all their data, if you look at the NAC alone arm, they were actually doing better before the study got stopped. And a ton of people withdrew because of that one of the arms is killing people at rates 11 times higher than the placebo. And that was the prednisone azathioprine arm. And that was particularly for patients with IPF.
Just a quick comment. I had an incident last August where I got sick and went to the family doctor. He gave me some stuff. I had sicker, ended up in the emergency room. And when I talked to my pulmonologist later, She said, don't go, when you start having breathing, anything to do with your breathing problems, don't go to the family doctor. You call me now, right now. Don't go anywhere else or I'm gonna flog you. Worse than flog you. So it's something I hadn't thought of. You know, you get the sniffles and you start feeling like you got a cold. You go to the family doctor, take some pills and everything's fine. Not anymore. So I learned my lesson the hard way, and because that's why you ended up in the emergency room because you did not call me. Don't do that again.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's not that none of my patients ever have to go to the emergency room, but I think it's particularly important if you are on immunosuppression. I've had it happen numerous times where if I had seen the patient, I would have stopped their mycophenolate or their azathioprine for an acute illness. And people that are not used to prescribing these medications may not know that, that there's an indication sometimes to hold them. For IPF medicines, that's not the case, but for CellCept, azathioprine, if someone has a flu, a temporary hold of those medicines is very reasonable. That's knowledge that a family practitioner probably doesn't have, or a lot of people. Great, thank you all so much.
See what I'm so excited about having Dr. Silhan. Isn't she just absolutely? Two things. I want to make sure to remember Roseanne is patiently waiting to be stampeded. Now, if you do attend the ATS business, not only do we pay the exorbitant entrance fee they have for you because we'll be at our booth, but you're getting a really nice fancy t-shirt with our logo. You're going to get a per diem to cover your lunches and your parking, and you'll have our eternal gratitude. So please come. And then Shelley, and I'm going to try to work this for you, so if you want to have a few words to say, get up.
Thanks, I stand up, but I have a new knee, and it doesn't work with me very well yet. But I guess remind everybody to spring forward on your clocks tonight. And some of y'all may have noticed and heard the noise outside. UT Southwestern has told us we should probably not plan to have any other meetings here the rest of the year. So I immediately called Baylor and asked them if they could accommodate us. They can't for every meeting, but we're going to probably be juggling some meetings around. It wasn't too bad today, but there's a big construction hole out there. For our April 13th meeting, this is an important meeting. It's going to be at the Lakewood Country Club, and you're supposed to bring family and friends. And Dr. Chad Newton from UT Southwestern is going to speak to us about PF 101, so you'll get the basics. And I think it's going to be an important way to raise awareness among others. And if there's any family history of pulmonary fibrosis in your family, certainly you would want your family to have this information. We will be serving breakfast. It'll actually be from 9:30 to 12 at Lakewood Country Club. We're going to send you a lot of emails and e-bites about this to remind you, so we'll need a good head count since we'll have a breakfast. And let's see, that's all I can think of. And probably remember Jim Ramage in your prayers. He and Marianne have moved down to Houston to get him ready for lung transplants, and we definitely want to support him however we can, sending all of our best wishes from the universe to him. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Shelley. You keep that for a second.
Okay.
The last thing, just to kind of give you an insight of something that's happening, we're going to be involved in as a group. We've talked before, kind of a talk at, not really talked a lot about, a program we've launched. It started off at Baylor Scott Way. We're calling it a quality of life / Pathfinder program. And it's where Three Lakes Foundation is supplying a full-time, on a 3-year grant, RN nurse who's specially trained in pulmonary fibrosis to work with each and every new patient that's diagnosed, as well as with our community. In support of that person will be what are called pathfinders. And that's people from our group collectively. We have about 200 members in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. We're going to end up selecting somewhere around 6 people to go through intensive training. There is an honorarium to go through the training. Training will be on the disease and a lot of other aspects of helping patients on a one-to-one, peer-to-peer relationship. Well, we just, yesterday with Dr. Craig Glazer, had that program at UT Southwest. So we'll be doing both hospitals, and this will be a full-time nurse employee of the hospital who works with us collectively and works in turn with our PFWarrior group. So every new patient, and there's probably on the average about 50 to 60 new patients a month between the 2 hospitals, will be joining our group. So I'm very excited about it, but I'll be coming back to you collectively, looking for people who want to become pathfinders. And it's an obligation on your part, and sure, there's a lot of reward, a lot of education, a lot of training for it, and it's an important thing. But what greater way to help each other than by helping each other? So, anyhow, thanks for coming, guys.